What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Cervantes Podcast. Joining me today to discuss the documentary Genius, a Kanye Trilogy, Kanye West and Kim Kardashian's divorce drama, and Kanye's harassment of Pete Davidson are my guest co-hosts, Kaitlyn Sanchez and Gavin Jones. You guys should remember Kaitlyn from episode 19, #Free Palestine, and Gavin from episode 15, More Than an Athlete. Genius, a Kanye Trilogy, is a Netflix documentary film directed by Coodie, Simmons, and Chike Ozah about the life of rapper, record producer, and fashion designer Kanye West. Viewers had the chance to see unreleased archival footage from the past 2 decades, including his career in music and fashion, the death of his mother, Donda West, and his unsuccessful 2020 presidential campaign. What did you guys think of the documentary?
All right. So yeah, I had heard about the documentary last minute, just like everybody else. And I was actually really surprised by it. I saw a lot of different sides of Kanye and the people around him that I had never even known about. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Okay, and for you, Kaitlyn?
I knew about it because, being a fan, we've kind of known that he was filming a documentary for years, but it was always just kind of never said it was going to come out or when it was going to come out. It was just kind of this random thing that we kind of had over our heads that a documentary was being filmed and we didn't know what was going to happen with it. So when he announced the time, I was like, oh, it's probably not going to come out at that time, that day that he announced it. But surprisingly, it did. Probably because Netflix made him because they bought it. But, yeah, I knew about it vaguely, but I didn't really have much of an idea of what it was going to be because he's been filming it for so long. So.
Right. No, yeah, I think I just found out about it through maybe TikTok or just scrolling on my timeline. And I was like, okay, and I didn't really the way I feel about Kanye, it's been a little so I wasn't really interested to watch it. But then I was like, wait, I have a podcast. Let me do a poll. So I did a poll on the Instagram story. I was like, do people want to hear me speak about this? And I think it was I forgot the exact percentage, but a lot of people wanted me to speak about more than not. I was like, okay, maybe I should watch it. This is what I'm trying to, cater to the audience a little bit more this year. So I was like, let me watch it. And then after watching the first 10 minutes of Act 1, I was like, oh, this looks like it's gonna be good. And while I don't agree with his political views and sometimes his personal actions, I do respect how much he believed in himself at such a young age because it's crazy how he had so much belief in himself before he even dropped his first album to document his whole journey, if that makes sense. Before he even made it. And I think that takes a lot of courage and confidence, which we know he already has. But that's really cool to see someone manifest their dreams so much and then it actually happens. I feel like we don't see that much. We have a friend that wants to be a rapper, SoundCloud, whatever. But it's cool to see on that level,
Yeah, Kanye's the definition of speaking it into existence.
He really in Act 1 of Genius, titled Vision, narrator and director Coodie Simmons said, most people just saw Kanye as a young producer who could hook him up with cheap beats. But he told me the only reason he made beats was so that he could rap over them. When it comes to his songs, are you immediately drawn in by the production of the music or his bars or lyrics?
So me personally, I've always been a big fan of Kanye as a producer. I think a lot of the songs that he does, especially as of recently where he's been, back into his producer type bag, where he's really been focusing on all elements of the music. I think he's genuinely one of the best producers I've ever heard. And I know he doesn't like to brand himself as that, but I've always seen him as one of the best producers. So the fact that he's still one of the greatest lyricists to me of all time, I feel like that seeing that combo, seeing that manifest itself from just a guy who was a producer to watching him have that confidence of people that believe in him, I thought that was really cool. So I'm a big admirer of the production side.
Yeah, personally, I actually just had this conversation with my boyfriend a few days ago because he's really into lyrics and I'm somebody that is obsessed with a good beat. I want to hear something good. I said to him, if I cared about good words, I would just be reading poems. But I also love a good beat. I need something to sound just as good as it registers in my brain. And of course, Kanye's an amazing lyricist, and some of his lyrics have really got me through the worst times in my life. But just being able to play any random song and knowing that I'm gonna vibe and it's gonna feel good to listen to it, whether or not he's talking about the darkest thing in his entire life or just going to a party or whatever it is. Like, I know that I'm always going to feel like something, and I'm always going to want to like listen to the song because of how it sounds rather than just like the message. Like, the first thing for me is always, this sounds sick, and then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pay attention to the lyrics now. Like, what is he saying in it for after?
No, I get where both of you guys are coming from, because I think as a young person, I immediately am drawn into but a song by the production, like Gavin was talking about, and the beats and the rhythm and the melodies and like the background stuff, and like the bass and all that stuff. So that's what I'm immediately drawn into, and that's what like I feel like when you go to a party or when you go to the club, like that's what they use to really sell the song. But then when you're just like in your room, just vibing, it's like it's the lyrics that I'm paying attention to, especially if I'm going through something like what you said, Kaithlyn. Like if I'm sad, I'm gonna listen to a sad song, and a really great written sad song. So for sure, and I think I like both for different reasons. And in this documentary, we see a lot of Kanye's late mother, Donda. In one scene, we see Kanye, who at the time is still an unsigned rapper and trying to make it in the rap scene. He goes to visit his mother in his hometown, Chicago, and he and his mother have a heart-to-heart talk. There is one phrase in particular she tells him that is really quite profound. She says, "The giant looks in the mirror and sees nothing." The word giant is a metaphor for being great. Donda is basically telling Kanye to not get caught in his own ego. If the giant sees his own reflection as a giant, he is more egotistical and arrogant than someone who is great. Donda was essentially teaching Kanye to be humble. Do you guys think Kanye should be more humble?
I think that he should, but I don't think it's for the reasons that a lot of people believe. I think that in his own right, he's earned everything he's accomplished at this point. He's fought through all of it, the pain, even tragic, almost life-threatening events. He's fought through it all. So I feel like, and he's pretty much one of the richest, black men, we've ever seen in our modern era. So I feel like he's definitely earned the respect of being, important, being, an influencer. But I think when it comes to acknowledging human rights and people in their political senses, I think that he does need to kind of humble himself. I think there are always going to be people that are smarter than you in a certain area, people that are better equipped than you in a certain area. So for him to constantly go into different areas of life, and feel that he should be the best and feel that he should, I think that's the type of mindset you want to have, right? You want to achieve that, you want to strive to be that, but I don't think that you have to necessarily go about it in an arrogant way that sometimes he can cross the line into.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that as far as music and like his talent, I don't think that he needs to be more humble because he is the GOAT. Like, he knows that he is the greatest at what he does. And I think that that's a wonderful thing for him to have that sense of security. In other aspects of his life, I do 100% think he needs to be humbled. I think his accomplishments are amazing outside of the music world and in the music world. But I think when it comes, like Gavin said, basically exactly what he said, when it comes to talking about people who he doesn't relate to anymore, people's life experiences, when it comes to equality, he needs to remember that not everybody is a billionaire. And not everyone is going to be a billionaire, whether they came from where he came from, whether they came from below or above that. Not everyone's going to end up where he is because not everyone is lucky enough to have the talent that he does or the support that he did. So I definitely think he needs to humble himself in that regard. As far as music, he's allowed to be as cocky as he wants because, when you're the greatest, you can act like the greatest.
Right. I agree. I think that you have to be careful of the messaging you put out when you are a public figure, when you have like so many followers, so many fans, whether you're like an artist, a political person, you have to be careful of the messaging because you have a big platform. While with music artists, we're kind of used to rappers being cocky, like that's kind of expected of them almost. And like you both said, like you should be confident. But I guess when it comes to, I guess, like personal, like when he's talking about something that isn't music and he's like outside of the studio and he's talking about something that can affect us, the general public, you have to be careful, and don't spread fake news and don't you can like it's not really about Democrat or Republican for me. It's more so like don't say untrue or offensive things. I think that's what it really is. Like don't send out like harmful messaging. In Act 2 of the documentary titled Purpose, we see images of Kanye after getting into a tragic car accident in October 2002, where he almost lost his life. A few weeks later, with his mouth wired shut, he started working on his lead single, Through the Wire, from his debut album, The College Dropout. His dentist told him his recovery would take a long time and he would not be able to film the music video for Through the Wire. 5 months after the surgery, Kanye wanted to get another surgery to fix his bite, but it would have put him out of commission for too long, so he decided not to get the surgery. Kanye turned his frustration and pain into purpose. He went on to win 2 Grammys for Best Rap Album and Best Rap Song for College Dropout and has sold 4 million copies worldwide. Did you guys know about his fatal accident and the history behind this album?
So yeah, I actually did know about the accident. I learned about it a while ago when I was reading up on him, maybe at middle school. I was, learning about, he was starting to develop that influence on me. I was starting to listen to a lot more of his music. So I definitely did learn about that. And I did know that, College Dropout was around the same time period. So a lot of the songs from there had influences. But what I didn't realize is how quickly after the accident he actually put himself back to work. I didn't realize that it was literally like maybe days, weeks, where I think they said in the documentary that even while he was in the hospital bed, just a couple days after, he started writing Through the Wire. And so like I didn't realize how quickly it actually was. And the fact that when he recorded Through the Wire, he was still, he still had his mouth still very messed up. So that's why it sounds a bit different when you listen to it. You can kind of tell, but those little details I didn't know, but I definitely could see how it could influence The College Dropout, which ended up being a complete, success.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Yeah, I knew about the accident. I only knew though because I was really young when Through the Wire came out, and I remember like being really young and watching the music video on MTV. And I didn't obviously know who Kanye West was. I just knew the song, and I watched the music video, and like you see the pictures of the accident, and I'm like, that's sad. Like I didn't know it was his accident because I was so young. I didn't like put 2 and 2 together. But like over time, obviously, like always growing up listening to Kanye and then actually getting to be a fan of him, like know more about him as a person, then I put 2 and 2 together and I was like, oh, those are images from his car accident. But yeah, I definitely think I was a little surprised at how quickly, like Gavin said, he started making the album after. I knew that like the actual song was literally like wrapped Through the Wire, but I didn't know that the rest of the album was pretty much like shot right out right after. So that was pretty surprising to me.
In Act 3 of the documentary titled Awakening, we see Kanye speaking to people in the audience at the Kanye West Foundation fundraiser back in August 2007, where he says, "They say overconfident like it's a bad thing. How could you be overconfident? You should be overconfident. It's almost a mentality of a slave that is too loud. So that's my thing, willing to beat the negative perception that they try to throw on a confident Black man because they haven't seen that before." We kind of spoke about this a little bit before, but do you guys agree?
So I actually, that was one of the messages throughout the documentary that I did kind of agree with. I think that a lot of people, if looking at that section of the documentary, if they look at it, they can read it wrong. They can read what he says wrong, which I think a lot of times does happen with his words. Sometimes he says things so erratically. Sometimes he says things in a certain type of way where people don't really understand the way that maybe he wanted to actually put it out there. I think that's kind of played into a lot of his recent rants and outbursts on Instagram. But I think that when he did say that the way that he acts is looked down upon and it shouldn't be, I thought that was extremely important, especially when speaking to young people as well, because a lot of people, I think that his confidence as well as the people around him led him to be so successful and led to a lot of his biggest breakthroughs. And I think that if he didn't have that confidence, Lord knows where he would be. He wouldn't have been able to go into the different offices of all those different execs and sit through them disrespecting him and sit through all that stuff. I don't think he would have been able to do that. So for him to then display that confidence all the time, I think that's, his right. He's earned that. And I think that when people say that it's almost like a slave mentality, I think that he was 100% right. They don't want to see a successful Black man being so, exuberant with his life, being so, expressive, because it may influence another Black man to be just as expressive and successful. And that line can continue. So I think that I definitely understood at least where he was coming from at that point.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the fact that he's a Black man 100% without a doubt in my mind comes into play when people criticize him, because they criticize him very differently than they criticize so many other people. And I don't think that him having confidence is a bad thing. I think it's what, like Gavin said, it's what got him where he is. We would not have a Kanye, and we would not have most of the people that we listen to now without Kanye if he did not have that confidence. I definitely think that, we've already touched on it. Sometimes he can really slip up, and that confidence can really transition into a harmful ego, and kind of he doesn't know how to, portray some things that he wants to. He doesn't know how to really like vocalize and verbalize a lot of the things he wants to say in a way that people can digest it more. Especially like we see him going back on things he said and like trying to apologize or trying to explain it, especially like in the documentary, we see that. Even when he's on the radio station after the whole TMZ situation, just seeing him be there and be receptive to a Black woman and a Black man telling him like, this is what you said that was harmful, being from the Black community, and seeing him be receptive is kind of reassurance, at least for me, that he doesn't want to say things to harm the Black community. He just doesn't know how to say things, and nobody is checking him and telling him, you're saying this wrong. You're not being sensitive to the fact that there are people being affected by what you're saying. So I definitely think his confidence is a good thing in, a music sense, but I definitely think that people also criticize his confidence a little more than they would criticize somebody else's.
That's true. That's true. I can't lie. And I think I think we let the society lets white men be arrogant. They let a white man say whatever, and they're treated a different way. But then maybe Kanye could act the same way, and it's like, oh, whoa, chill, buddy. So that's definitely true. And I think maybe I have to check myself too. Like, oh, am I criticizing Kanye West or this Black person harsher than I'm criticizing this white person acting out of control? Like we might have to check our own selves. And I think, but like you said, that confidence is his thing. I think we all listen to music artists for a certain reason. Like we like Beyonce for this reason. We like person B for this reason. And confidence is a big part of his brand and the lyrics and the music and like the reason why he is the way he is. And I think his mom had a lot of confidence as well in him and as being herself as well. So, shy Kanye, we wouldn't listen to him. It would be a different Kanye, like Gavin said. So it's definitely a good point. We kind of have to let people be themselves. And then, when they do act out of line, let's handle them accordingly, but let's handle everyone the same way. And it's, we know why we can't always do that, or people can't always do that, but let's, attempt to it at least. Agree. What did you guys find to be the most surprising in the documentary?
So for me, I thought, the craziest part of the documentary, was probably when he was showing off All Falls Down.
Okay.
I think for me, that was really crazy, watching him go into every single studio and watch these regular, just executive people who are probably no names today in the industry, just completely ignore him, completely just, brush him off, completely just brush off, the thought of, the song even being good. Some of them people were laughing at him, they were putting him on hold, interrupting him in the middle of it. And I found that crazy because to me, I'm sitting here like, that's one of the greatest songs I've ever heard in my lifetime, probably one of the greatest, rap songs of our generation. And they're listening to it. And maybe if he was a bigger artist, if that was Jay-Z who walked in and played the same exact song, they'd probably be sitting there like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. But because he was, just known as a producer, they all didn't really believe in him. They just sat there and pretended as if the song didn't have the quality that it did. And I found that to be crazy. And I bet those people, they're sitting here now in 2022 watching that documentary like,
damn, I don't look so good there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all they had to do was just pay attention, and they would have been responsible for putting on one of the greatest artists of our generation. They would have made their bag off of just helping him, but it seemed like they had a complete ignorance just because of who he was. So I thought that was probably the most surprising part for me.
That's a good point. And for you, Kaithlyn?
Yeah, I didn't think about that and how surprising that really was. Like, I was watching and I was like, this is so weird. But it really is like incredibly surprising. But for me, what I probably found really surprising was like the dynamic he had with Coodie, and like that point where they kind of drifted. It made me really sad. But it surprised me because I didn't really like I never really thought about it. Like, I knew who Coodie was like vaguely because like whatever, I'm a Kanye fan, like, oh, the documentary, blah blah blah, like, but I didn't really realize the different cycles that their relationship went through. Even seeing after the Grammys party, like Kanye kept calling him the wrong name, and he was like, dude, I'm gonna hit you if you don't stop calling me the wrong name. And he was like, oh, chill out. And like, that made me so sad, and I was just like, no, please reconnect. Like, I hate this. Like, obviously they do, and that makes me feel better, but I felt really upset about that because I was just like, I know the idea of like drifting from your best friend or somebody that like has been there supporting you for so long, and I know how sad that can be. And I don't know if Kanye felt as sad as Coodie did, but I do know that like that feeling that Coodie felt definitely is not a nice one.
Right, because like you're supposed to be like the homie, and like why are you forgetting my name? Even if you are drunk, why are you forgetting my name? Like, that's crazy in front of all these
Yeah,
people on camera.
I don't know if I would have reacted as well as he did, because I would have been like, excuse me, that's not my name.
Honestly, to add on to that as well, I felt like that part where it showed that they had disconnected or drifted apart. I thought that was also a really big sign of the people that Kanye had around him and the influences. Because I think even to our last point, we were speaking about how people can sometimes get out of line and you need somebody to check you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought when when his mom passed away and when Coodie started to fade out of his life, I could really start to see the difference in his mentality. And the people he had around him started to completely change. And I think that that's where, his, at least mental state, in terms of, being checked and, making sure he's, always correct in these situations. I thought that that's where it started to go off the rails, where he lost the people around him who really cared, because Coodie was somebody, he was his best friend. He really cared about him. I mean, Kim Kardashian is his wife, but the Kardashians, it doesn't really seem like they care about him enough to check on him, to check him when he says things, to make sure he's, always in a positive and healthy state. It feels like, the people around him just were wanting the money that he brought in, and were just keeping him around, playing a yes man, watching his antics blow up. And so I thought that was when I saw that disconnect. And even when he came back and when they met up again, and he was almost acting like a completely different person for a while until they really started to gel, I thought that was a really big indicator of the fact that Kanye had the wrong people around him for a while, and you can see the lasting effects.
The Kardashians don't even have anybody to check them, so I don't see them checking Kanye either. I definitely.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. I think sometimes people probably switch up and they change they change their friend group, and it goes from like neighborhood people and neighborhood family and friends to like industry fake yes men. And then you can kind of see a difference in the artist from like maybe their first couple albums to now, or just like their personality from then to now. I think the Kardashians, I can only assume, but I feel like the Kardashians were probably scared of Kanye, of him like lashing out on them. So instead of like controlling him like they did with other exes, I feel like they like, okay, let's leave him alone. Like, oh, he doesn't want to be filmed, let's not film him. Like, we're not gonna ruffle any feathers because we don't want to get speaking poorly about in the media or in a song. And I feel like he didn't speak poorly of them until this divorce. which is very interesting. So yeah, I think you really gotta, and I think that's a lesson to us, like, regular people, to like be careful of who we surround ourselves with in our circle, and like don't switch up on people, because had Coodie and Kanye still been close, Kanye may not have, done certain things. Coodie's not his dad, he's not a therapist, but I think, if you're friends with somebody and you see them acting a little, out of pocket, you would try to, reel them back in, like, hey, you good, bro? Like, stop doing that. So I think it would have helped.
Even with the Jesus Walks video, like Coodie told him, "You're gonna use this guy, you're gonna not like it, and then you're gonna call me and ask me to do it right." And he was like, I just gotta try and spread out to the industry. And Coodie was like, "All right, whatever, do your thing." And exactly what he said was gonna happen happened, because like the people that know you best are gonna know you best, whether you want them to or not.
Right, right. And like don't burn your bridges, because you never know when you're gonna need that person again. That's so true. Which album of Kanye's is your favorite?
So for me, I think my favorite Kanye album would probably have to be The Life of Pablo, just because I think maybe not his best album, but I think the album that had the most impact on me was definitely The Life of Pablo. I think just because of the timing of the time that it came out. I was in high school. We all have those little high school dramatic low periods where we just need good music. We need some good influence. I thought that hearing his sound in The Life of Pablo, hearing the sound of all the people around him, I felt like that's where he started to kind of at least somewhat try to realize, like, oh snap, I'm really far away from the people that cared about me. And so you started seeing him work with artists that he hadn't worked with in a while. You started seeing him pull in, big industry artists that he knew were going to have, good influences on him. People like Frank, doing certain things. Coodie, who's one of his closest friends in the industry, just bringing a bunch of different people around him that I thought that were very big advocates for at least somewhat of a better lifestyle. I thought that was one of the albums that definitely stood out to me as like, damn, like this man like has had an impact on my life. Like he's definitely.
That's a good one. I didn't expect you to say such a recent one, but that's definitely a good album for sure.
Yeah, my answer changes depending on the point in my life that I'm in. Right now, the album I listen to most is probably Graduation. Like that album comes in and out of being my favorite album because like I grew up on that album specifically. Like I remember listening to College Dropout, Late Registration, but Graduation was the album that like I was like, I like this guy. And then probably second would probably be Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, only because um that album is what got me into music as like an art form rather than just like being a fan of like things that I hear. Cause I remember the very first time I ever listened to it, it was downloaded illegally through LimeWire on my brother's iPod that I would take
Wow.
to elementary school or middle school or whatever, however old I was back then. I would take it on my bus, my little purple iPod case, like, and I would put in the headphones and I would listen to it on there. And I remember the first time I listened to it, I was on on the bus to school, to my Catholic school in my little uniform, and I was like, what the hell is this? And like obviously I didn't get through the whole album during the bus ride. On my way back I was listening to it. When I got home I was listening to it, and my mom came home and yelled at me for taking my iPod to school because she saw me take it out of my backpack. And I was like, I cannot talk to you right now. I finished the album, and after that I was like, this has literally changed my life forever, and I've never looked back. And now music is one of the most important parts of my life, all thanks to that album. So it's
I
up
love
there.
that. No, yeah, it's very nostalgic. His earlier work, it's very nostalgic. My dad, it was and is a big fan, and I always heard that in the house, on the car to school, car coming back from school. It was a big part of my childhood. I would say the earlier work. I would say College Dropout, Graduation. Those are my favorite. Life of Pablo was good. I think it was part one. Father Stretch My Hands, part one. I think I like that one. The song the most in that album.
Life
I
of
didn't
Pablo was
include
nice.
this, but in a versus battle, who would you want to see Kanye go against?
So I've actually had this conversation with a lot of my friends. Like we have had this debate, especially when the verses started coming out, we started talking about, who would be the best. go up against each other. And I feel like Kanye is one of those untouchables where you need like somebody who has a lot of hits, and nobody really has those bang. I mean, you could put Drake up against him, but in the verses, you kind of have that. You need to have that intensity. And I don't know what Drake is gonna do if Kanye puts on Jesus Walks. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. So I feel like maybe a Lil Wayne, I could see having that type of music, or those types of those hits, or maybe like a Jay-Z, somebody like that who's well established, already has all their hits behind them. They can really have that backing.
Okay.
I think Lil Wayne's a really good one. I didn't think of that, but that's actually so good because they both like head to head ran the early 2000s. Like
Exactly.
if number one was either Lil Wayne or Kanye West, like it was like they were really the kings. So I think that's a really, really good one. I was gonna say maybe Kendrick, but I don't think his discography goes back far enough to be like a good answer. So I'm gonna say Lil Wayne too.
Kendrick, he's my favorite rapper of
Me
all
too.
time. So obviously, I could definitely see him in there, but I think he needs a little bit more work to encompass a Kanye versus.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
That's a good point. That's a good point because Drake is he's a little bit more recent, and his work, he has a lot of hits, but it's more so like
pop. It's like
yeah, and it's not really like classic yet.
Yeah.
Like what do you call it?
Drake's albums also don't hit as hard as his popular singles do. Some of his albums are like the same thing a couple times, but I'm not gonna talk shit.
Yes, yeah. I hate to say it. Because that's one of my favorite artists. But that's true. That's true because it's like it's 30 songs in an album, and why do I only like 7 of them? Like that's
so true. Like I could bump a good Drake album every once in a while. I could listen to Drake. Like I grew up listening to Drake too, but like
yeah. That's
gotta be
so
fair.
we need someone, and Drake is more, I feel like it's more Gen Z, whereas Kanye's like millennial and Gen Z that he like surpasses. So that's a good point. That's a good point.
Drake is a part of the culture. Kanye changed the culture, I think.
I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that. Moving on to a different topic, more recent topics. Back in February 2021, Kim Kardashian officially filed for divorce from Kanye West. West has dated multiple women since then, but that hasn't stopped him from targeting Kim's boyfriend and comedian Pete Davidson on social media and through his music. On March 3rd of this year, Kanye and The Game released a music video for their song Easy. In the video, there's an animated clay version of Pete that Kanye kidnapped, tied up, decapitated, and buried it alive. Davidson has yet to react to the video, but plenty of people are expressing concern about the graphic and somewhat threatening images the rapper chose to depict in the visual. The music video ends by making one final remark about Davidson. The clip concludes with a text that reads, "Everyone lived happily ever after except Skeet. You know who. JK, he's fine." Did Kanye go too far, or do you guys believe this is just art?
So I'm kind of 50-50 on this topic because on one hand, I feel like a lot of what the media is portraying about the situation isn't entirely true. I feel like even when Kim and Pete, when I heard about it on the radio when I was driving to school, I heard about Kim and Pete starting to date. They had just become a couple. And for me, I was kind of confused because I had known a lot about the SNL skits that they had done, specifically Pete Davidson on Kanye West, and a lot of the jokes that Kanye had previously said he did not like. A lot of the jokes had come out about Kim and Kanye that he tried to make fun and stuff like that. So I had known about that. So off rip, I was just like, this. I'm very surprised that she's even entertaining this because of the past history he's had with Kanye. So when I saw Kanye, starting to send little shots and little things at Pete, I was like, honestly, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want somebody who's been tearing me down, tearing my family down, tearing my career down for jokes and stuff around my kids. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. So in that sense, I feel like I can't necessarily, fault him entirely on that because I wouldn't want somebody like that, or I wouldn't feel entirely comfortable if somebody like that was around my children, was, being around them, stuff like that. But when it comes to some of the rants that he's had where he's, put out Pete Davidson's address at one point, or his phone number or something like that, he had, made the clay, art depiction as you saw. I thought at that point he had just exaggerated the problem and turned it into something way more than it needed to be. And I feel like he doesn't also understand the influence that he has on his followers, where that, I mean, I don't think any Kanye fan is gonna sit there and do any craziness, but at the same time, Pete Davidson ended up getting millions upon millions of DMs, comments, tweets, all at him, shaming him, all this other stuff like that. So I thought that in that sense, it was really harmful and that he way went over the top. But in terms of his just general dislike for the fact that Pete Davidson's around his kids, which is what he's claiming that this is. He's claiming that it has nothing to do with Kim, and that he's not into her anymore, but he just doesn't want Pete around his kids. In that sense, I'm like, okay, fine. There's ways to go about that, do your thing, whatever. But when it comes to the way that he's going about it, I don't know if it's necessarily right.
Right. And for you, Kaithlyn?
I have a little bit of a different answer because for me, like I had this argument with my boyfriend because he was really upset about it. He felt very strongly that Kanye was like out of pocket for what he was doing to Pete. But I kind of said like where I grew up and like the place that my family's from, like if you get with someone's like baby mom or like their ex-wife, like you're gonna get a lot worse than like an Instagram post like saying like I don't like this guy, call him Skeet, you know what I mean? Like I just think that this generation is a little bit soft when it comes to things like that because I grew up, like my parents are pretty young, so I grew up listening to 90s and 80s hip hop and rap. So to me, like a hip hop beef, like you're talking about killing each other, you're talking about shooting each other, you're bringing up each other's kids and things like that. And like we look at like Eminem, like yeah, a lot of people criticize him for going like stepping out of line and saying like some really messed up things in his music, but like that's rap. Like you're getting with one of the greatest rappers of all time's ex-wife and you're not expecting to be mentioned in a song. Like I think that you're kind of delusional if you don't think that that's going to be like a thing. And as far as like the claymation thing, I just think that was jokes. Like I really don't think that that's a big deal. Like to me, I was kind of just like, well, at least it was a claymation. Like if it was my dad, it would actually be him. Like it's very different, from where I grew up. I don't really think of like threatening someone on social media as even like a real thing. Like if you do that, you're lame as it is. So I think Kanye just doing that, I think it was lame that he did that because he could have like just come to this man as a man and been like, listen, like you said these things about me. This is the mother of my children. I'm in the middle of a divorce. He could have been like taken like a man to man with him and he didn't. So I don't love that. But as far as like it being too far, personally, I don't think it is because I've seen a lot worse and I know that it could have been a lot worse. But it's all about perspective and I definitely understand like on a broader cultural societal level, like it's not acceptable that he was so vocal and so public about his criticism about him. But like on a personal level, I was just like, it would have been worse if it was the father of my children. Like it would have been a lot different. If it was me, like it wouldn't have been Instagram. Like, you know what I mean?
That's true. No, you have a good point. I think it was rap. That's where rap kind of started, rap battles, in the street and stuff like that. And then, back in the days, it was much more violent lyrically. And sometimes, off stage, like people really like went to prison. Like so many people have went to prison based off of, real beefs. It wasn't just like a rap beef. So that's definitely true. We see that in the 80s and the 90s from our favorites or, people who are no longer here. I think like you said, I knew Kanye was gonna speak about Pete in a song. I knew that because as musical artists, you take your personal life and you put it in your music, and that's what keeps us like, oh, okay, like wow, like I want to hear more. I think it's just it was the claymation for me. That's a bit graphic. And I didn't expect him to go that far. I think it had to been like a different type of artist, like Machine Gun Kelly, or like someone a little out there. I would expect them to do that, or maybe someone like Billie Eilish who has very interesting music. I don't know, someone a little bit different. I wouldn't expect Kanye to do it. I thought it would just be him like dissing him, and then like next. And we're recording this on April 15th, and Kanye's been kind of quiet for a minute. So I wonder what the next thing is gonna be, or if he's gonna sit down with him, or maybe he's sitting down right now and speaking to him. But yeah, I would rather that than opposed to like shots on social media, because I feel like his age group wouldn't take it to social media. I feel like his age group would take it in person, like meet me outside, you know. So I'm surprised that he's acting like that. My next question: on March 13th of this year, it was reported that Pete and Kanye allegedly exchanged words via text. During the exchange, West reportedly asked where the actor was, and he allegedly responded by before before sharing a shirtless selfie with the text that read, "In bed with your wife." Davidson also offered the rapper help with his mental health struggles and offered to meet in person one-on-one. In exchange, West invited the comedian to Sunday's service, but it's unclear if they met up. What did you guys think of Kanye and Pete's conversation on iMessage?
This kind of just reiterated the fact why I personally wasn't looking at Pete or Kim as, full-on victims in this situation. This is part of what reiterated it for me, because I feel like, the media is like, oh my gosh, Kim, she's in danger, as if, she doesn't have billions of dollars to protect her. As if Kanye is, he's not going to hurt nobody. Like, I feel like the media is portraying it, oh my gosh, like, and then so when I see that Kanye posted the actual text messages of Pete saying what I thought was pretty disrespectful, like they're trying to have a discourse with somebody. I don't know what the conversation was, the context beforehand, and they may have been arguing beforehand, and then that's what he screenshotted. But from what I saw, that was pretty disrespectful, especially when that's, like he's already said, he doesn't plan to be with her, he doesn't want to be with her, he just wants his family, he just wants his kids be in a good position around him, stuff like that. So when you're like, oh, I'm in bed with your wife, da 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 da, and then right after that you try to be like, oh yeah, and by the way, I can help you with your mental health if you need it, by the way. I just felt like that was, I felt like that reiterated for me why I don't consider Pete Davidson to necessarily be a victim in this situation, and why I felt like the media, and even still after that, even after the screenshot came out, all the media was focused on, or these magazines, these tabloids are focused on, oh, Pete Davidson tries to help Kanye with his mental health and he turns him down, and Kanye's posting screenshots and putting. I'm like, did y'all not just see the part where bro just sent him a picture in his his ex-wife's bed and all that?
That's a good point.
I thought that was a big indicator of me of this shouldn't be as big as it is. Like, it shouldn't be as big of a deal as it is. But that's what I thought about it.
That's a good point. And for you, Kaithlyn?
I think the idea that Pete Davidson's gonna help Kanye with his mental health is a funny joke. Like, you have been with this girl for 6 months and you have her name branded on you and you got a tattoo about her, but Kanye's the crazy one because it's the mother of his children and he's upset that you're trying to interfere in their relationship. Like, if it was me, do not talk about somebody's children. Do not, no, like, absolutely not. I felt like people totally, like, they think it's cute and romantic that Pete is basically like love bombing Kim right now, and like that to me does not seem like you're stable and you're working on your mental health. And I don't know much about like Pete as a person. Like, I know what the media knows, of course, but to me, like, why are you like this? You're suddenly the spokesperson for good mental health. Like, you're on SNL constantly talking about being crazy and constantly talking about doing drugs, but you're going to help him with his mental health. I don't think that every person on the planet needs to get medication. I do think that he needs to be conscious with his mental health and knowing he has a diagnosis. I think he needs to be responsible about that for his own safety and for that of his children. Everyone else does not matter, but his children and himself are what matter in that aspect. And I do think it's important for him to do that on his own accord. And I think the people that love him and care about him should be a support system for that and encourage him to find whatever the alternative to medication, since he's been vocal about not liking medication, finding the alternative to that to help him and to, really help him, like, just be the best that he can and feel the best that he can, while also not going against what it is that he wants to do with his own body. I think Pete Davidson should not have said anything to him. I think if Kanye sent the first text message, like Gavin said, we don't know what the beginning of the conversation was. If Kanye sent the first text message, he should have been like, I'm not going to get involved in this. You're a married woman, or a soon to be not married woman, divorced woman with children with this man. This is not my place to get involved. I know that he's probably having a manic episode, and I have no business involving myself and instigating more issues. And so for him to not do that, and not only not do that, but also try and upset him more, knowing that you're dealing with somebody that struggles with their mental health very publicly and has been forcefully institutionalized, and you think it's okay to provoke him because I'm crazy too, so I can do it. That doesn't make sense to me. Me knowing somebody, I personally grew up with one of the closest people in my entire life, a family member, has the same diagnosis as Kanye. It is not easy to live with somebody that has that diagnosis. It is hard, and it's not something that you just interfere in if you don't know. Especially, it's not something that you comment on if you don't know. And so the fact that this person went out of their way to just antagonize him, knowing that he's probably manic, it just felt very horrible and like off to me. And it doesn't feel like, oh, I care about mental health. It feels like I care about weaponizing my own mental health when it feels good for me and when I can look good in the media because I'm a person that struggles with it. But also when somebody struggles with it that isn't like me or doesn't look like me or doesn't do it the same way I do, I'm going to villainize them, especially if I want to fuck their wife. But that's how I felt about it.
Ooh, those, you made a lot of good points. You made a lot of good points. This is why I had you guys on the podcast. You know, you guys aren't gonna say anything dumb, and you guys look at it from the big picture. Those are good. I didn't think about that going into recording this. I didn't think about that. I think the media definitely, when you follow like maybe like Variety or People Magazine or E News, they're gonna side with, I feel like, white people, and they're gonna side with the Kardashians. Maybe because, you know, Keeping Up with the Kardashians was on E. I don't really know, but that's a good point. I think before I didn't want to like defend Kim and Pete too much because I was like, you know, I don't really because there's a lot of things about her that I don't like and I don't agree with. So I didn't want to put them, like, defend them too much. I just feel like, I think for me, I want them to co-parent maturely, because I think a lot of times, like in the Black community and also in the Latino community as well, we see sometimes like it's hard for two parents to co-parent, especially to parents of color. And I think that sometimes it can have how the parents behave can negatively impact the children. So we want, like, I don't want, you know, they're rich and like they don't need to worry about me, but I don't want those kids to be traumatized because of how their parents are acting, or, you know, be bullied in school. Because I'm sure, you know, everyone, you know, North is of age to understand what's going on, and I'm sure that that's not easy, going to school and people are making fun of you based on what your parents did, and it has nothing to do with you. So I think that's how I was looking at it, and I feel like I'm defending the kids actually, not Kim. But I think that's a good point, because how could you joke about being in bed with someone's wife but then want to help them and then do this stuff, and then the media, like you guys said, flips it in a way that Kanye's the bad guy and Pete and Kim are completely good, and Kanye isn't right for the way he's been acting, but Pete wasn't right for sending that message, making a joke, and then wanting to help. And then also that history, which I didn't know about, Pete making fun of Kanye on SNL. I knew he made a joke about the red hat thing, which I was like, okay, you know, that was a crazy moment, and people are going to talk about that whether Kanye likes it or not. But like the history of him bad mouthing him over and over again, I didn't know about. So of course, if you're going to date, if I already don't really like you and now you're dating my baby mother, it's like, okay, like this is kind of weird. And I'm surprised that Kim would date somebody like that doesn't like the father of her kids, because she usually keeps it cordial. So like, why are you dating him out of all people? So those are great points. Those are great points. I think like we said before, Kanye and P are gonna have to sit down at some point and like speak, because this can't keep going on, you know, for at least, if not for their sake as men and being mature, for the children, because that's really who's going to be affected. Kanye can always date whoever he wants. Kim can date whoever she wants. But, you know, be careful who you introduce in front of your kids, and be mindful of their well-being, for sure.
I definitely think like Kim has a responsibility as the mother of his children, to also tell her boyfriend, stay out of it. Don't get involved. Don't say anything to him. Even if he antagonizes you, just out of respect for me, don't respond. I think that like she did the right thing when she texted him and said, listen, I don't like you posting these things. Please don't. Obviously, he did a weird thing with that, like posting it. It's a weird thing to do, but you know, it is Kanye, so what do you expect? But I do think that she needs to also step in at some point and just be like, this cannot be like a back and forth, because at the end of the day, like you said, the kids are who are going to suffer. And I think she needs to, like, just as a mother, take the responsibility of, you know, this is not how we're going to handle things. Because Kanye's girlfriends are also not going on Instagram or going on SNL or texting him like, oh, I'm with your ex-husband. It's a very different way. And I don't like these women. I'm not advocating for any of his girlfriends. I don't like them. I like to be vocal about that. I'm not defending them as people, but as far as the way the relationship dynamic goes, North is going on trips with Pete Davidson now. We see that they've met. So this is a lot more serious, and you as the mother of these children, as the ex-wife of this man, and as the girlfriend of this man, you need to make those boundaries a lot more clear and a lot more firm.
Yeah, if you're dating someone and then you have kids with someone else, the person you're dating should not discipline that child, or at least not physically discipline that child. And that person needs to know its boundaries, because you know that's not your like I saw somewhere that North, I don't know if it's true, but North apparently allegedly sat on Pete's lap. That's gonna get a lot of people. That's gonna get a lot of fathers upset. Like, why are you're not? What's going on here? I don't. My dad doesn't even let my sister sit on male relatives' lap. So who are you? You know.
I think it's also a cultural thing, because I saw on Twitter when that happened, there was a lot of like white women, like, what is the problem? That's her boyfriend. And then I saw a lot of Black women saying like, y'all don't get it because it's a cultural thing. And it's true, because even like in a Latino household, like that's not a thing. Like your daughter is not sitting on a man's lap. The only man whose lap I've ever sat on is my father's, because that's my father and it's different. My stepdad was in my life for 10 years, and I knew him before that too, and he's never even asked. Like, that would be so out of pocket for that to ever happen. It's definitely a cultural thing, because Kim, as like a white-washed woman, I won't have the race debate about whether Kim is white or not, and Pete, as a white man, you don't get it. But that, to me, I saw that and I was like, that's not okay. Absolutely not, in any way, shape, or form am I letting the thought of my daughter sitting on a man's lap that I've been dating for 6 months, any man generally, but also a man that I've been with for 6 months, you're crazy. Absolutely not.
No. Do you think Kanye's social media outbursts are a result of his bipolar depression or his innate personality, or perhaps both?
For me, I definitely think that it's a bit of the combination of both, because I think that he does have a lot of very genuine posts. A lot of them are about his kids, about, seeing them, about spending time with them, about, showing pictures of them at the Super Bowl, or, just sending pictures of her at school, or, even just him in the studio, or just him, something like that. I feel like that's, the genuine part of him, his personality. I think that that's him being an artist. I think that, that's, any regular person's Instagram. I think that when he does, if you're going through something, especially as serious as, dealing with your ex-wife and her new boyfriend, and, the child custody, regulations and rules, and how, he wasn't being allowed to see her as often as he wanted to, and how the Kardashians were controlling the amount of time that he could see her, and this and that. I think that it's very hard when you do have a bipolar disorder to be able to maintain your calm, and, especially when you have a tool like Instagram to influence and let people know about, everything that's going on in your life. I think that some of those posts definitely were not, thought out, calculated posts. They were in the moment. He's mad about something. Let me show people, or, even in the sense that, they're controlling stuff with behind the scenes. I want people to see this. I need people to see this now, in this form, in this fashion. Just post it now. I think that that's, in that sense, I think that it was a bit of the bipolar, having, not having that full control over, your emotions and your personality. But I definitely think that a lot of the posts that he was making came from the heart, came from him as a genuine, a genuine individual, as his own self, being, expressive. I thought that was definitely, his personality.
Right. No, that's true. And for you, Kaithlyn?
Yeah, I think Gavin said that perfectly. It's really just a combination of both. And I just want to add like one other thing that I think is also a contributor, and I think it's his age. Because I think him being a 40-year-old man, like with children, he doesn't really get social media. And I know because my parents are in the same age group as Kanye and Kim, and like my mom tells me about like the Facebook drama. Like when people in that age group have an issue with somebody, they will go on Facebook and they'll at such and such and be like, I can't believe you did this thing to me. And for us as like we sub people like with a subtle post and we're like, I hate bitches, like something like that. But like a 40-year-old dad is going to be like, I really don't like that you did that to my wife. Like, I don't like you for doing this thing.
With their
I think
full name and
right,
all that
exactly.
stuff.
I think he doesn't get it. Like my dad is the type to like, if he wanted to, like he could post on Facebook and be like, listen, Steve from down the street, like I don't like that you did that. I don't like that this happened. You know what I mean? Because he's a dad, like he doesn't get social media. He's 40 something years old and he also is Kanye. Social media isn't his thing. He goes on Twitter, yells, and then doesn't go back for another year. Like I really don't think he even gets the standard of like, you're not supposed to blast your ex-wife's new man on Instagram. Like that's not what you're supposed to do. I think he also just doesn't really get like how we react to it as like the subtle generation, as the generation that's like, I'm gonna sub this person and that'll be it. Like that's the conflict,
Right. Like we navigate social media. Our age group, Gen Z, very different than, I don't know, he's not a baby boomer, but
I
what,
think
older
they're
generations.
Gen X.
Gen X, I think. Yeah, so we navigate social media different than older people, or people older than us. But yeah, that's a good point. That's good. I think it's a combination of his mental health struggles. I think his personality that we discussed, being very confident, um, and yeah, his age. I think he definitely needs help. He definitely needs therapy and definitely needs maybe better people in his circle, like you guys mentioned earlier. And I think that, get rid of the yes men. You like get rid of people that are just I guess too scared to share their opinion truthfully. Or like, they don't want to fumble their bag, so they're just gonna go with him and just say yes to whatever. So I think he definitely needs therapy. He definitely needs to. He's been quiet on social media. Again, we're recording this April 15th, so he's been quiet since the last like outburst, which I think was the text messages or him being upset about Pete and North or something. So he has been pretty quiet on social media, but I think he needs to step away and like go on a retreat or go on vacation and step away and hang out with his girlfriend that looks like him, Channing Jones, because I think that should help, like stepping away. I wish Kanye went the Jay-Z route, where like, how Jay-Z and Beyonce, they never say anything about anything.
Yeah.
I kind of wish more artists were like that. It's easier said than done, because I wouldn't like if someone came at me or my family crazy, how certain people do, like just regular people on social media. But I just wish that they kept it quiet, so that like it's not like how do I say, it's not like a mess. Like I'm sure I feel like Jay-Z, if he has a problem with someone, he handles it privately, and I think that's the best way to go. But I can't tell a 40-plus-year-old man what to do. I just wish people were a little bit more like quiet, or not quiet, private, I should say. And finally, is it difficult being a Kanye West fan despite all the antics? Should problematic celebrities or celebrities who do problematic things be canceled or just held accountable?
Um, I don't know if I'd say it's difficult. I feel like, the last couple months have definitely been interesting because, I'm a diehard Kanye fan, trying to defend him, through a lot of the stuff that he's been doing hasn't necessarily been easy, and it hasn't always made me want to defend him. You know, obviously there's certain situations where I've been like, bro, you're wrong. Like, my guy, just chill out. Like, there's no need for you to be posting this. There's no need for you to be posting that. So I definitely feel like maybe in that sense it's been difficult, but overall, especially with this documentary, I feel like I've been able to see, and obviously I've known this for my whole life of being a Kanye fan, but I feel like I've definitely been able to see a more well-rounded version of Kanye. And I feel like this documentary has helped Kanye fans in the sense that we don't have to defend, Kanye's, moral character, because you see it you see it early on in his career where he really does have a good head on his shoulders. He has the right people around him. You can see what a person can do with the right support system. And I feel like Kanye is such a genuine person that he still had that throughout his career. It's just, the people around him have caused a bit of toxicity here and there. So I think that celebrities do deserve to have a bit of, backlash when they do problematic things. Even if it is Kanye, even if it is one of my favorite artists, I definitely think that he's not above being called out for certain things. But in terms of defending him, I feel like it hasn't really been too crazy, especially with this documentary, because all this time I've been saying, Kanye is a well-rounded person. He just doesn't have the right people. He needs help. And I feel like that's what everybody else can kind of sort to see now.
Right. And for
Yeah, I agree. I think it's weird because like in my circle, like in my friend circle, I have maybe one friend that like actively listens to Kanye, but isn't like, I don't think she would call herself like a Kanye fan the way I do. But like I have friends, like pretty much all my friends, every time anything happens with Kanye, I get a text like, oh, did you see blah blah blah? Or like somebody will be like, what are your thoughts on blah blah blah? Like it'll just come up, and because they know how much like I love Kanye and how important he is to me, like his music and like his art in general. So it's definitely like it's it's always a fun conversation starter. It's not always a fun conversation, but it's definitely a conversation starter to be a Kanye fan. Nobody around me is ever like actively gotten upset or like angry with me, because I also am a rational person with like a head on my shoulders. So when he does something that is like, he's done some really like terrible things. I like said he's not done like crazy things, but he's said some really, awful things that I don't agree with. But I also like being somebody that has experience with somebody who has bipolar disorder. I kind of like feel a little bit more sympathy, and like I let him kind of get away with things sometimes in my own head, because I'm just like, I understand how difficult it is for him to maneuver things and to say things and to process some of these things. And not to excuse it with mental health, but it's just like the reality. It's not easy. So I think it can be like a little annoying when every time he does something that people don't love, I get an argument or like a subtle like back and forth with somebody about it. But at the end of the day, he's a good person. He's just he makes some questionable decisions, and I think he's just trying to maneuver life like the rest of us are, and he's just doing it very publicly with a diagnosis that's very difficult to deal with. So I think it's not hard. It's just it's part of the job description. We love him and we appreciate his music, and it helps us just as much as we need to support him.
Right. And maybe conversations like these where you're not arguing in a comment section and you're having your actual conversation with friends or family, it could help. And you could actually get to the root of it. Like, oh, maybe it's this more so than this. And I think our generation, like sometimes we can like cancel people too quickly. And I think sometimes some people do, and I actually want to have an episode about cancel culture. I think some people,
get me
some
on that.
artists, yes, definitely have you guys back. I think some people definitely deserve to be canceled. Like, in my opinion, like I don't feel comfortable being a fan of R. Kelly and Stepping in the Name of Love. I don't feel comfortable, supporting Bill Cosby, and I feel like that's also very extreme. Certain people do deserve to be canceled, but I think other people maybe not canceled, but like held accountable. and like have the conversation and, okay, maybe ban him from the Grammys. He won a Grammy, which was crazy, but it's like, okay, maybe give him consequences and not like mute Kanye. We don't need that. And I think sometimes, looking at it from the big picture, like you guys seem to do, and like, okay, how is the media portraying it versus what actually happened and what was actually said? I think that's a good point, like stepping back and not just immediately, bashing him on social media or something. So I think that's true. And I think that's why I wanted to have this type of episode where it's well-rounded, where I'm talking about the documentary, which is positive, but also I didn't want to lean one way or the other too much, because I wasn't planning on talking about Kanye at all in the podcast. But because of my listeners, I was like, okay, you guys want to hear this, so let me talk about the documentary, but let me have a full, well-rounded conversation so that I'm not being biased, but also I don't want to bash a Black man for an hour. Like I don't want to, I don't. This is a safe space for Black and Latino people, so I don't want to. It's hard. It's like when someone that looks like me does something messed up or bad, I don't want to bash them in front of, like, on the internet, but I also want to have a full, real conversation, if that makes sense. So it was important for me to have both sides, his artistry and how great he is, but also, hey, maybe let's not do that, or let's, okay, like you're wrong here, but you're right here, and having nuanced conversations. I think that's basically what I'm saying. Where can everyone follow you guys?
You guys can follow me at Instagram at _Gavin Jones _ best place. Find me. Look me up on LinkedIn, Gavin Jones.
Awesome. And for you, Kate?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's Kaithlyn.s, just like how it's spelled, a little weird, Kaithlyn. And that's pretty much the only social media I use that's public. So Instagram.
Awesome. If you would like to watch the documentary Genius, a Kanye Trilogy, it is available now on Netflix. Be sure to leave a rating for the Cervantes Podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Cervantes Podcast YouTube channel and click the notification bell up top so you never miss a new episode. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.